part right here. And so to do that, let's use some splines. So I'm going to come into the front view. I'm going to start by drawing out a spline that flows along kind of the length of this arm section. So we're going to come up here to splines, and if we click on this, there are several ways that we can draw out splines. I'm just going to choose cubic, and to draw out our spline, we're just going to click and click to add points. So I'm just going to add a few points coming in here. Now we can come in, and with our selection, we can move those points around, and I just want to place this kind of in the center of what we see in our view there. Okay, so something like that. Now from the front view, it looks right, and I think from the side as well. It looks like it's going to be in just about the right spot. You can see there in our perspective. So now we need some geometry to flow along this curve, and to do that, we'll create just a spline primitive. So let's use a circle because it's going to be sort of circular shaped. Now the circle is going to exist just down here. Let's just leave it there for now. Now to get that geometry flowing along here, we need to use a generator. So we're going to use a sweep. So we're going to come in, and where this is subdivision surface, we're going to come down and use this sweep. Now again, just as with our other objects, it's not going to do anything until we set up our hierarchy. And so let's just drag our splines inside of this sweep. So we'll drag the circle in, and we'll also drag the spline in. We'll go to object mode. Now, right now, you can see it's not really giving us what we want. The order of these splines in here is important. So right now we have the spline first and then the circle. So let's switch the order. I'm just going to switch and drag that up. And now you can see it's in the right spot, but it's really, really big. So when we want to change the size of this, we're going to change not the sweep, but we're going to change the circle that's creating that. So it's still a primitive, so we can go in and just change the radius. So we can dial that radius down until we get something that's much closer to what we want. You can come in here and see how close that is. So we can kind of pull that down a little bit. We can also come in here with this spline, go to points, and we can manipulate these points to make sure that this arm is in the kind of the right position. And you can see how that geometry automatically updates. Okay. Now we can also change kind of the resolution of this. Now right now this geometry is being generated, and so we can come in here with the circle, and I'm going to change the intermediate points, and let's change those to natural, and I'm going to take this down to something like that. And that just gives us fewer polygons when we actually convert this. Okay, and you could come in here with the spline and you could do the same thing. Kind of clean that up a little bit. Now we don't need caps, so at this point anything that has to do with the geometry itself that's being generated, like the caps and things like that, that's going to be in the sweep. So we can come into the sweep and I'll say no, I don't want any caps on the start or the finish. Now one other thing that we want to do is we want this to scale down. Okay, so if we go into object, you can see that we do have an end scale. And so we can come in here and sort of taper this down. So you can see at 100% it's a little bit too big, but we can kind of taper this. So we get something like that. If the base is a little bit too thin still, we can go into the circle and increase that. Go back to the sweep and decrease our scale. And then if it's in the wrong position, we'll select that spline and move the point into the right spot. So it's all about knowing what you want to change and then knowing which part of your hierarchy will enable you to make that change. So now we get our arm right in the position. It's tapered down nicely. One thing that I want to maybe change is I want to have maybe a little bit more resolution in here to be able to create those kind of raised areas. And if we're changing the resolution going along this direction, that's going to be in the spline that we've got here. So I'll just increase that number to 2. All right, so now we need to create those raised areas. And so let's take this sweep, which is generating this whole thing, and if we just make editable, that's going to turn that into a polygon object. Now we can go into our loop selection. So we'll use our polygon tool, select loop selection, and let's select every other one. Let's do an extrude. Again, making sure create caps is turned off, and let's extrude this out a little bit. Now let's go back in, again with loop selection, and we'll select the alternate loops that we didn't select that time. And let's do an extrude there as well. And I'm going to extrude those maybe not quite as far. Now let's add a subdivision surface, drop it inside, and see what that looks like. If we turn off our lines, you can see we get that nice kind of rubberized kind of look. Okay, so that's how we can create our arm using a sweep with just a couple of splines. All you have to do to take that sweep and make it into a polygon is just make that editable. And then you can go in and manipulate it just like any other polygon object. Keep in mind, if you want to change the eventual resolution for the converted polygon, you're going to look at the splines and then look at the points for those splines. So if we go in here and I add another circle, just remember the intermediate points, and you'll see that update on your mesh. So the next thing we want to do is use a slightly different generator to create the